Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Thank you for listening to Your Working Life, my podcast series featuring luminaries in the career, leadership, financial, entrepreneurial, and wellness fields. I know you spend a significant portion of your life at work, so I'm on a mission to provide you with tools, inspiration, and resources so you can enjoy your career and love your life. And I'm so delighted to welcome Jody Gastfriend to the show today. Jody, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm really well. Thank you for spending time with me. I want to tell our audience that you're the Vice President of Senior Care Services at Care.com. You're a licensed clinical social worker with more than 25 years of experience in the field of elder care, and you have a broad range of leadership positions that you have held, including Director of the Department of Social Services and Case Management at Lawrence Memorial Hospital, Clinical Supervisor within the Social Service Department of Massachusetts General Hospital, Chief Operating Officer of a Medicare Certified Visiting Nurse Association, and Director of Adult Care Services at a national backup care company, where you established a successful and expansive elder care division serving more than 130,000 employees. And Jody, you're really an expert on what we call the sandwich generation, and I so appreciate your time sharing your expertise with us about that. So what is the sandwich generation?
Well, I guess I would say not only am I an expert, but I'm also a member of the sandwich
Okay, there you
generation.
go.
And that is a term that refers to the 24 million Americans who are, in a sense, sandwiched between their aging parents and family members and their children. And most of them are in the workplace. So they're experts at juggling, if you will. They're
Yeah.
juggling the care of parents who are aging and may have chronic illness and may have all sorts of needs. They may not live near their parents. The workplace, as we know, is very demanding. And their children, often teenagers, some of them applying to colleges, also need them. And the other challenge is, where do these sandwich generation caregivers have time for themselves?
Yes, yes. And that's a constant struggle, right? The concept of work-life integration. So how does this relate to careers and how it impacts us in the workplace?
Well, what we're finding is that many caregivers, most of whom are working, are finding it very difficult to remain focused at work. And
Mm,
research shows that they are more likely to take a leave of absence, to show up late, to leave early, to really not show up at all, to have something we call presenteeism. Sounds like a good thing,
interesting.
but it really
Yeah.
isn't. It's, all of us at some point have experienced this. You show up at work, you're looking into your computer, and you're not there. You're somewhere
Yes,
else.
yes.
And that's not a good kind of engagement in the workplace. So, we're really trying to figure out, well, you can't, the reality is we have an aging population,
Hmm.
and that's a great thing. More and more people have grandparents and parents who are in their 80s and 90s and beyond. But how do we structure life so that it's really manageable for all these caregivers and that they're not going into a crisis themselves and not taking care of their own health and welfare?
Now you at Care.com have some solutions. So talk me through it. What can employers and employees do to help those who are managing these sandwich generation issues?
Well, we do have some solutions, and we actually have a program called Workplace Solutions. And it's a suite of benefits for caregiving employees across the lifespan, from child care to pet care to household help to senior care, which is my area of expertise and passion because my dad had dementia for 10 years.
Mm.
I have 3 kids. My mom recently fell and broke her leg, and I was running back and forth across the state trying to manage it all. So I know firsthand what caregivers are going through. And when you have an employer that is not only understanding, but actually provides real meaningful supports to employees who are in this situation, it can make all the difference in the world.
So tell us what those solutions at Care.com look like. You know, not all employers are that enlightened. So what is an individual to do?
So we have a range of benefits. One is sort of a self-serve option where caregivers can go on our site and post jobs and find individual caregivers and resource information about their care needs. We also have a backup care program. So if someone needs in home temporary care for a parent or family member, transportation to a doctor's appointment, or some help at home with light housekeeping or other types of care needs, we can put caregivers in the home. The third program, which is the most customized and the most concierge, is called care planning. We have a team of master's level social workers who get on the phone with caregiving employees for whatever issue they have, and we do an assessment and we provide real time solutions. And we vet providers, whether it's home care agencies, assisted living communities, nursing homes, geriatric care managers, and we match them to the needs of the person receiving care. So it's a real time saver and it's a huge stress reducer
That's
for
great. That's
employees.
great. What I love about that is you're doing all the heavy lifting, right? You're doing the vetting, you're
Right.
doing the research, because that's the time that we just don't have, right? We're so busy living and caregiving and managing all of those issues that we just don't have that time for that vital part.
And it's time, and it's also the painful process for many folks of learning as you go.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you how many times people said, "Oh, I wish I knew about that kind of resource," or wish I knew this when I made the decision to put my mom in a
Yeah.
assisted living community or nursing home."
Right.
Having all the information, having the facts makes a big difference in outcomes.
So, Jody, let me ask you, honestly, woman to woman, do you really think there's
Yes.
such a thing as work-life balance?
Well, I'm 55 years old and I haven't discovered it yet. So
Yeah.
I do think, though, I think there are going to be times in our life when we're all imbalanced. And I think that's okay if it's for a short period of time. I think it's when it's sustained.
Yeah.
When you're really out of balance, you're not focused on your own needs. Your kids are getting shortchanged because you're spending every day with your mom who has dementia and you just can't manage it. You're not
Hmm.
paying any attention to your husband or your partner. These are the kinds of things that you really should sound a warning bell. And I think we all have to pay attention to what our bodies are telling us. That if we're not feeling well, we get stomach aches, we get headaches, we don't want to wake up in the morning, that something's out of whack, and we need to say to ourselves, I need to make a change.
Right, right. Well, I'm so glad that you're saying that because I agree the mythical work-life balance I think is just so unrealistic. There's an ebb and flow, right? And there's work-life
Right.
fit and we all strive for work-life integration. But I'm so happy to say, to hear you say rather, listen to your body, right? Listen to what you need. As caregivers, we are nurturers for others, and I think sometimes we tend to ignore our own personal, emotional, physical, mental, spiritual needs, right? So I'm delighted to hear you say that. What are some strategies, especially for those in the sandwich generation, to better cope with all of these conflicting responsibilities?
Well, I think the first place to start is at home.
Mm,
So I think if you have children, teenagers at home, we now have the phenomenon of millennials. I have
yes.
3 children in that generation who are boomeranging home for a variety of reasons.
Yeah.
Um, and so we even have something called the club sandwich generation, which is
Ah,
unprecedented, 4 generations under one roof. So,
wow.
starting at home, where can you get some help? And if you have children, some of whom may be adult children, at home, figure out ways to recruit them to
Yeah.
help out with their grandparents.
How to delegate.
How to
Yes.
delegate, because so often we see these sandwich caregivers, many of them are women, but certainly not all, and
Mm-hmm.
they are completely overwhelmed. They're taking everything on themselves. And when you suggest that, well, maybe you shouldn't be the one to do it all, often they say, well, no one's going to do it as well, or my mom needs me. And that becomes a trap.
Mm-hmm.
So start to delegate, even if it's not done as perfectly as you want it to. You got to kind of let go. And
Right.
I found with my own family, having expectations that my children helped out with their grandfather and their grandmother made a big difference in their own development and their own understanding and appreciation of aging. So I think it can be a win win.
I like how you said that. It's not just delegating, right? It's not just do the dishes or cut the grass. It's be a
Right.
part of your grandparents' life, and this is a life process, right? So I love how you articulated that. I think that's really important, and it does give them an experience, right? And it shows them that they are part of the life process with these loved ones. Beautifully put. So, what are some of the demographic trends that are impacting our sandwich generation caregivers?
Well, I mean, everyone's talking about the great tsunami. We are in an unprecedented time in history. Never before has the lifespan been this long. And never before have we had a demographic where we are soon going to have more people under the age of over the age of 65 than under the age of 15. So
Wow.
we're actually having, a lower birth rate and
Hmm.
more people who are aging. And the people who are aging, many are living well into their 80s and 90s, but many of them are living longer with chronic illnesses,
Right.
which means that they need people to take care of them and to help them. And the majority of that care is provided by unpaid family members. And as um, the baby boomers, of which I'm a proud member, are getting older, there's actually going to be less family members to provide care. So I think we need to think about caregiving in a more creative, broad minded way. I mean, we frequently get calls from neighbors who have taken it upon themselves to help with the caregiving of someone who may not be related to them, but someone who they view in a family like sense. So
Wow.
I think it takes a village, it takes a community. And it doesn't mean that you adopt people all over the place to take care of them, but it means that we all need to be in this together.
Well, there's a social responsibility in it, right? And it's part of being a good citizen, right? In the global sense. So I like how you frame that. So, Jody, what if you're a stressed out employee and you've got a job that's being impacted by your caregiving? What are some very practical steps that you can do?
The first thing I would say is don't keep it a secret.
Mm,
And many people, especially during the economic downturn, were really afraid to say anything about it because they were feared they wouldn't be seen as a serious employee. And they tried to keep it quiet, but that only lasts so long. I mean, think about it. If you're getting calls during the day, if you're having to manage and care coordinate during your working hours, your colleagues are going to notice it, and certainly your boss is eventually going to notice it. Much better to be forthright about it, and hopefully you have an understanding boss. But even if you don't, maybe there's someone in human resources who can be helpful because, as I mentioned, more and more employers are saying, wow, this is not just a situation affecting a few people. This is a situation that's affecting about half of the workforce at some point. So we need to figure out solutions. And you might be that very person who advocates for support on behalf of your colleagues who aren't speaking up.
exactly. And maybe there's a support system right within your organization that you didn't even know existed.
Right. And
Nice.
that's what we tell people first, find out what there is. And if there isn't a formal support, maybe it's time for your employer to think about putting one in place.
Right, especially if they realize that there's critical mass, right, in the organization. Nice, nice.
Exactly.
So, Jody, tell us more about care.com and how we can find out more and follow you online. You've got so many great things that you're putting out into the world. I want our listeners to know that they can take advantage of your resources.
Sure. So care.com is now the largest online resource for care in the world. It's very exciting. We have 9.7 million members across 16 countries, and we provide care resources across the lifespan from child care, pet care, senior care, special needs. And many times people need different types of care. So you might have someone who is looking for childcare, but at the same time, they may need some household help and they may need some senior care as well. So it's really kind of a one stop shopping for all things that are care related. And we have some great resources online, and we really try to help guide people through this very interesting, rewarding, and challenging process of caregiving.
Wonderful. Jody, one last question before I let you go. What should someone who's not quite yet in this situation with personal family experiences, but they anticipate it coming very soon, what can they plan for in advance?
Well, you can start educating yourself.
Mm,
That's a
good.
good and try to do it when you're not in the emergency room, when you're not in the
Yeah.
midst of a crisis, because that's when so many people end up having to go to the school of hard knocks. But you can go online to Medicare.gov. That's a great website. The Alzheimer's Association is another great resource. Go to seminars, webinars to begin to learn about what are the sort of basic nuts and bolts of caregiving, so that you're not caught off guard. What are the different types of care? How do you access them? How do you pay for them? How do you determine quality? And if you begin to have conversations with people who've gone through it, find out what they've learned, talk to some of the experts out there, then you'll have some foundation of knowledge when the time comes.
Excellent. Jody Gastfriend, thank you so much for sharing your time and your wisdom with us today. I know our listeners will benefit from these tremendous resources, and I do hope they check you out at care.com. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
And thank you for tuning into Your Working Life, where my goal is to help you design your career destiny so it doesn't happen by default. True career and life satisfaction is possible, and it's time to embrace what you love doing so you can do more of it. I'm Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Take good care.